Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm 20 years old, and around 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with type 2 autism and ADHD combined type. I wanted to make this video and channel just to kind of document my journey as someone still kind of figuring out who I am and how to kind of navigate life after this diagnosis. Um, So, yeah, if you want to join with me, definitely do. This video, I'm just going to speak about my, you know, how I kind of discovered I might be autistic and my journey with getting diagnosed and how I've kind of navigated my life since then. My future videos, I kind of want to, go out and try new things and kind of give my review and my thoughts regarding it from a neurodivergent aspect of it. But just be mindful that everything I say in this video and any other video is just from my personal experience, as all neurodivergents are very different in their symptoms and the way that they navigate things. So just be mindful. So I first started believing that I was autistic in January of 2024. I was 19 years old, just about to be 20, and I'd never really given autism a thought. I always believed since I was a kid that I was an outcast, that I was weird, I was different than my siblings, but I never quite put a word to it. And it was in January of 2024 when I kind of, my my For You page would be all about autism and symptoms. And I turned around to my therapist one day and I just kind of said, like, what do we think about this? Because I knew that not only that the diagnosis would be very expensive to get, but also it would probably change my life. And I didn't know if it was going to be in a good way or a bad way because I didn't quite know what I was speaking about, to be quite frank. And I got a lot of mixed signals when I told people that I was looking into getting diagnosed for autism. My partner of now nearly 5 years, we're getting married in 3 months. I'm very excited. He was the most supportive throughout this time, especially with all my symptoms coming to light, which I heard does happen after you kind of put a word to it and your brain just goes, oh, let me show you all your symptoms at the same time. Um, he was the most supportive throughout this time, and he said that he would help in any way. He even said that he would help me pay for my diagnosis if I needed to. I got a few mixed signals from family. They're a lot better now, but I've had a few family members and friends kind of say that I'm not autistic and that I'm overthinking it, and they don't understand why that I think that. I even got told at one point to change my therapist because my therapist also believed that I might be autistic. So I went to my therapist and I said, what do you think about this? I was feeling the biggest imposter syndrome ever, even just saying the word, because I was like, what if I'm not autistic and I'm just taking the word from someone who actually needs it? And my therapist kind of turned around to me and said, look, if you want to do a little kind of pre-practice test, and we can talk about it more, because she didn't want me to spend a whole bunch of money if I wasn't going to get the results I needed. So around this time, I was in a call center job, which I found was very hard for me, and I think was one of the reasons I kind of started realizing that I was autistic, because I was having a really hard time with my job, especially regarding the different schedules, um, the fact that we didn't have time to like kind of, have a timeout between calls, and just like the fact that like I would change seats every now and again without notice, and all that kind of stuff. I remember that at one point, so when I first started this job, I was in what they call a pod, like in an office with people that I had trained with. So I was very familiar with them. And two of them in particular were very, very close friends to me. And they were people that whenever I had a bad call or I was having a hard time, that I could just turn around and speak to them and it would make it like so much better. But there was one time that because around that time I had changed like the groups in my office, that they changed all the seating and they took those two people, well, away from me. But I get that it was a business decision, and I tried to be calm about it, but because it was all in one day that these two people not only like were not in my pod, but they were so far away from me that if I needed that like emotional regulation, it wasn't accessible because I couldn't just, stand up from my desk and walk and talk to them. I couldn't quite do that. And I remember having a very big breakdown in my office, which was very embarrassing. And I remember that my other coworker, who knows a lot about autism and is diagnosed as an autistic, she was trying to explain to my manager why I was so upset. But the issue I was having with that job is that because I wasn't diagnosed, unfortunately, there wasn't much that they could do to help me, which isn't their fault. I understood it completely. It was just very, very hard navigating the work life. I remember that, like, I would come home and be a mental zombie, and I wouldn't even have the energy to do the things that I love to do because I would come home and sleep. That's all I would do. And I was really having a hard time. And that was around the time that I turned around to my therapist and I said, I think I'm autistic. And for a few months, we spoke about it. We did a few, practice tests because she was, my therapist wasn't someone who could diagnose me, but she was at the time studying autism. So she navigated it really well with me. She even offered me a few books I could read, but I, in my imposter syndrome, thought that, oh, well, if I read this book, maybe I will accidentally make myself do these symptoms. I ended up finding the books that she recommended anyway after my diagnosis that I didn't even realize were the books she was going to lend to me. And I'll probably pop that through in another video because I've found so many books that have helped me so much in kind of navigating and figuring out who I am. So from then on, I was looking at getting diagnosed, and my therapist was able to find me a place here in Newcastle for a pretty good price that would not only diagnose me with autism but also ADHD. Although at the time, me and my therapist didn't really believe that I had it just because my trauma overlapped with my symptoms of ADHD. But I just wanted to get all of the answers in one go. I didn't want to wait. I just needed help. I needed support. And I felt that with my diagnosis, not only would my imposter syndrome kind of go away, but maybe I'd be able to get some accommodations at work as well. So I found a place here in Newcastle, and my therapist was able to talk to the director and get me a payment plan, which obviously was very, very helpful. And I wouldn't be able to get my diagnosis if it wasn't for her, because they are a lot of money. I got my diagnosis for autism and ADHD for 1,500, and I paid that off. The only thing was that I couldn't get my report until the final balance was done, which was fair enough. So, next I'll talk about the kind of way that you get diagnosed, at least what happened with me, and just the way that I felt about it. So, the first thing that they tell you when you first make a diagnosis appointment is they send you through a questionnaire maybe a week or a few days beforehand. And this questionnaire is just kind of like, it's very vague, which is why I had a really hard time doing it. I told the person in there when I did my in-person interview that it was very hard to maintain and like answer. So it was just questions regarding, do you need help in everyday life? Do you shower regularly? Do you need help? Do you work? Do you need help working? How are you with social cues? Do you stim? Do you blah blah? And around that time, I didn't really know what any of these words mean. I didn't know what stimming meant. I didn't know what pretty much anything meant. And when I did know, because it only gave you an answer of, yes, no, or like yes or no, or sometimes, all the time. It was very hard for me to navigate this questionnaire because in my head I'm like, well, I need more of an I need to give you more of an explanation. Because the answer in my head wasn't just yes, it was like me. I was like, there's no comment box for me to explain it. Which I found out later was the whole point of the questionnaire. And so I went in, so I got the option of either doing it online or going in person to do it. And I felt as though I just need to do it in person, just because, I don't know. I don't know why I chose at the end of it to do it in person. I prefer to do kind of appointments in person just because it's easier to connect with people in a way. And also sometimes my internet just crashes out. So I wanted to make sure that I got the best kind of results that I could. So I went into this appointment. It was a 3-hour appointment. And throughout it, she just, asked me some questions. She got me to, there was a basket next to me, and it had a bunch of sensory toys. And she asked me to, see how I felt about them. And there was one of them, I don't quite remember what kind of toy it was, but I'm very particular with my sensory toys. And I literally recoiled from it. I was like, I don't want that to touch me. As you can see, I'm currently have this little sensory toy here. I break these so much. They really need to make them better. But I'm very particular with my sensory toys. I don't like the hard ones just because they feel too hard in my hand. I like being able to actually squeeze. It helps me a lot. The only issue with these ones here, if you do decide to get them, is that these little things here will pop open. So it can break very easily. I've broken 3 in the last 3 months, which is not fun. But they are really good just to have at home as well. Just if you need something to fiddle with. Very much recommend. I got these, my friend actually got me a sensory kit. I believe you can get them from Kmart or Target, I believe. But they're really good. So I would definitely recommend if that's something that you like. So throughout this appointment, I just remembered that there was this blossom, cherry blossom kind of looking tree in the corner of the room. And I just remember that I was really focusing on that while I was answering questions because, like a lot of autistic people, I don't like eye contact. I make it because growing up, I was somewhat forced to. I was told that eye contact was respectful, and navigating it in adult life is very hard. I've had a few people say that I've accidentally stared into their souls. I don't know how much eye contact to make. I've gotten a little bit better at it in my new job because the manager had to actually, take me aside and ask me about it. But I'm still trying to navigate that to this day. It's something I do know I struggle with all the time. Especially sometimes I just unfocus my eyes and I don't even know that I'm looking at someone. That's something that I do as well. So I don't quite remember all of the questions that were asked. It'll depend on, the place you go. If you're just getting, there were some questions that were for autism. There were some questions that were for ADHD. And all I remember is that after the 3 hours were done, I was preparing for the worst. I was preparing for her to say, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, I'll take your money, but this is stupid. That's what I was kind of expecting. Just because the imposter syndrome is insane. But at the end of the appointment, she said, look, I can't, she said that, of course, she has to go through with the higher ups and all that kind of stuff. But from at the moment, she said that she is confident diagnosing me with level 1 autism. She needed to have a look at the ADHD just because, as I said, my trauma kind of overlaps with my ADHD. So she said that, she had to have a look at that, and they also had to wait until... So when they give you a diagnosis, I'm not sure if this is just for ADHD or autism, but they have to phone interview someone very close to you. So I gave them my fiance's number. So they'll ask your partner or whoever you put down a bunch of questions about maybe some things that they see you doing that you might not know. So they'll ask pretty much, if they've noticed that you fidget a lot, if they notice that you're bad with social cues, they'll ask them pretty much similar things that they ask you, just to see if they also notice it as well. So I remember Noah telling me that he did get this phone call. He didn't explain exactly what they asked and everything like that because he forgot it. But he said that there was a few things that he told them that I do that they were like, yeah, those were actually actual symptoms that Noah didn't know were symptoms, and I didn't even know I did. So I went out of this interview and I was somewhat satisfied, but also, not gonna lie, a little bit disappointed. Just because I know that with type 1 autism, it is very hard to get support. And although I was grateful that I even got anything, because as I said, at the time, I believed that I wouldn't even get anything, I just knew that I would still be struggling because type 1 autism doesn't, you can't go to NDIS, you can't get any kind of support in that way. That you could with type 2 or type 3, for example. So I'm going to explain the types. If you're someone neurodivergent and that's fine. But there might be some people watching that don't quite understand. So type 1 autism is pretty much, the way that I've described it to people is that it is saying you are autistic, you do have some, issues with everyday life, but you're somewhat independent and you don't really need that kind of support. It suggests that you get therapy to help with your social cues and everything like that, but it pretty much states that you don't need support other than that. So you don't need, a support worker, you don't need, things like that. So type 1 is kind of, high functioning. So you are autistic, but they deem that you don't really need that extra support. Type 2 is mid-functioning, which means that, so I'm type 2, it means that I am somewhat independent, but there is a lot of things in everyday life that I do struggle with that I will need extra support for. What support I get will really depend on NDIS. I'm still currently waiting, still currently in the wait list. So when they do my interview with NDIS, they'll have a look at whether, I need funding for sensory, things like sensory swings, sensory toys, all that kind of stuff, whether I need funding for support workers, whether they need to speak to my work, all that kind of stuff. It's just for extra support. But it means that I am independent, but I do need that extra support throughout my life. Type 3 is, from what I remember, really low functioning. So it's someone who sometimes they may be non-verbal. Sometimes, they just need that 24/7 like support. It might not always be 24/7 support. I'm not quite sure. I'm not, don't take my word for it. It depends on the person, but it just means that they are someone who needs that extra, more support than ever. Especially people who are non-verbal. That can be children, adults, pretty much anyone. So that's the way that I explain the different ones. You can have a look online. They probably have a better explanation than I just gave you. But so when she said that she wanted to give me level 1 support, obviously at that time I was already in therapy. So that in my mind, I was saying, okay, that means that they're not going to be able to give me anything. So right after that happened, I was like, look, I can't really force them to give me something that, if they don't think that I have it. So it took a few weeks for me to get my diagnosis. And I remember the day that I got my diagnosis, I asked them to give me a Zoom call in the morning before work. So they gave me, I popped onto my camera, and the lady on the other line, it was a different lady than I had spoken to on my interview. She kind of said, do you want the diagnosis first, or do you want me to go through the report? And I was like, you need to tell me. You need to give me the diagnosis. Otherwise, I am probably going to have a breakdown. You need to tell me. So she said that she diagnosed me, and the higher ups diagnosed me as level 2 autism and ADHD combined type, which floored me. As I said, I accepted at that point that I wouldn't get any support. I accepted at that point that I was only high functioning and that I don't need anything. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to navigate this in my life. Getting that diagnosis, the ADHD completely surprised me. And apparently it was mostly due to my partner's testimony that they decided to diagnose me with ADHD, because there was a lot of things that he told them that I didn't even notice that I did myself. So I cried. I bawled my eyes out because I had the worst, I've said imposter syndrome so many times throughout this video, but it is true. I had the biggest imposter syndrome. I was every single day thinking, oh my God, I'm just taking this diagnosis from someone else. I'm just being stupid. I don't know what's happening. And especially because, as I said, a lot of people, a few people around me were also saying that they didn't believe that I was autistic. It kind of just really, really made me think oh my God, this is stupid of me. So when I got that type 2 diagnosis, it was the biggest relief that I've ever had. Of course, it was very, very scary. I I can't even explain the feeling. Like, it was so scary because I'm like, oh my God, like my whole life has been a lie. Like, that's how I felt. I was like, oh my God, like my whole life has been a lie. How am I going to navigate this now? And like, what are people going to think of me? That was my biggest thing. I was like, what are people going to think? What are my family going to think? What is Noah going to think? Even though he was the biggest support, I still had that fear that, you know, that no one would like me, that no one would want to deal with me. And like, she was going through this report and I was listening to her, of course, but I was just in my head, like overthinking completely. And I remember that Noah walked in because it was at home that we had our office, and he walked in and he saw me like crying and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, and I told him my diagnosis. And I don't know why I expected him to like, you know, back up or something. I guess it was just my paranoia, but he was like, oh, I figured that. Like, he was like, I figured that you were. And he was the most supportive to me, and he still is to this day, of my diagnosis, especially after the diagnosis. So she went through my report. I had a little bit of a laugh because there were some things in the report that I thought was a bit funny, like me accidentally like interrupting the interviewer and all that kind of stuff. But she went through the report and just said, yep, I'm going to send this through to you. Do you have any questions? And I was like, no, like, this is just like, yeah, this is all the only thing I asked was about NDIS. And she said that she'll send me through the website to kind of put my name down for NDIS. So now I'm going to talk about just how different my life has been since my diagnosis. So I didn't see immediate changes. As I said, I think I got my diagnosis in like September-ish, October, September. And I had been thinking I was autistic since January. So I had already seen some symptoms, obviously, because that's how I kind of figured it out. So I already saw some symptoms. So I was like, okay, once I get my diagnosis, it's fine. Like, I already have my symptoms. I'll just learn to navigate it. I was very wrong. Right after I got my diagnosis, my symptoms went from this to this. Like, it went insane. And again, imposter syndrome. I believed that I was just making it up. I was making myself more autistic because now I have the diagnosis. So I was like, oh my God, I'm subconsciously just trying to make myself look autistic, which is not the case. I've spoken to my therapist, I've spoken to other neurodivergent people, and apparently it's very, very common. I figured out that throughout my whole entire life, I have been subconsciously masking. What masking is, if you don't know, whoever's watching this, is pretty much a front that autistic or neurodivergent people put on to kind of fit into their environment and fit into society. Sometimes people can do it, you know, they know that they're doing it, and sometimes they do it subconsciously. I figured out that I've been doing it subconsciously. And so from this kind of knowing that I'm now autistic, I kind of little by little started unmasking subconsciously, which built my fear of, oh my God, I'm making myself autistic, which isn't the case, but which is how I felt. So it became hard for me to do things. For example, I have a hard time with showering, which is something very real and something very embarrassing, but I have been a lot better with it recently. So I have a sensory with going from wet to dry and dry to wet. I'm fine once I'm in the shower. I'm fine. But the issue is the transition from getting out of the shower and getting back in. That's the issue that I have. Also with towels. There are some towels that I just need to do it really quickly, otherwise I'm going to cry. Like, I can't do that. Also with sound. So these little babies, I'm currently using them to fit with my microphone, but I wear these everywhere. If you see me, you will see me with these headphones. I have them on me 24/7, and I'm not even lying about that. So I bought these from JB Hi-Fi for around $200. They're noise cancelling headphones. Now, they have saved my life from a meltdown more than once since I've got them. I got them before my diagnosis, actually, and they still helped a whole bunch, especially after my diagnosis when my symptoms went up a notch. I can still hear people through them. I can put them on and have a conversation with someone. They're really good headphones for music as well, but it's pretty much that they drown out the background noise, which really helps. Not only because I get distracted with background noise, but also because I'm very, very sensitive to noise. There has been many times during work. I currently work in a shopping center. And so sometimes shopping centers are very loud, especially during Christmas. That Christmas period was not good for me at all. They would have, parades with drums in the center. They'd have like music in the center that sometimes I've recently realized the person who does the music in our center sometimes just ups it all the way to the top, and it is so loud, and sometimes I have to walk in the back and like have a little bit of a cry. But these headphones have helped me so much, and if you're sensitive to noise, please go get noise cancelling headphones. It has definitely been hard navigating like how I look with the headphones, because in my mind I'm like, oh my god, I look more autistic with these headphones on. But I've kind of, starting to try to realize that, yeah, it's because you are. You are autistic, that's why you look autistic. It's fine. And a lot of that confidence has come from Noah. Because you will get looks. I've gotten looks everywhere I've gone with these headphones. It depends where I am. The biggest one I've gotten is whenever I want to go out, and have a drink with friends or go to clubs. Not that I do that a lot, because that is a very, very hard environment for me to be in. I've gotten a lot of looks from my headphones. I've gotten drunk people talking to me, being like, oh, well, is the music not good? Why do you have headphones on? And it's something that I've had to kind of accept. Not a lot of people understand autism, and that's fine. I've even had people that after I say I'm autistic, they've like kind of treated me like a baby. I've had that happen a few times, and although I need support, I'm definitely an adult. Like there's a lot of things that I can do. It just means that I navigate the world a little bit more with more difficulty than some people. And I've had a lot of mixed, reactions with my autism diagnosis. As I said, my partner has been the biggest support, and props to him because he has been here throughout all of my symptoms. He's one of the people that I actually feel comfortable unmasking with. Since being diagnosed, there are some times that I mask subconsciously, but I have been kind of navigating how to mask and how to unmask, which has really, really helped me, because being able to unmask, even just for a little bit, has really, really helped me in not getting burnt out, which is something that I went through a lot of the time before my diagnosis. And, that can be stimming. I figured out that I actually do stim after figuring out what stimming was. So stimming is kind of a repetitive motion or action that an autistic or neurodivergent person does to kind of, how do I explain it? I'm raw dogging this video. So, just like a repetitive motion that pretty much regulates the person's emotions. So I sometimes, when I can't wear my headphones specifically for work, when I'm walking, say to the bathroom, sometimes I'll do like a little repetitive motion with my hands just to like distract me from the noise around me when I don't have my headphones. Sometimes I'll do it when I'm happy, like I'll jump up and down. Sometimes I'll just like wiggle in my chair. Sometimes I'll do real subtle stims. So I'll like do this when I'm walking just to like kind of, again, try to distract myself from the noise. I've noticed a few other ones that I do, but they're relatively around the same kind of category. I try not to do it in front of people at work, but sometimes I do kind of do it without even thinking. Sometimes I click pens. Sometimes I just like do this with my pen. I've gotten sensory toys for work so that I, don't sit there flapping at customers. But yeah, sensory toys is definitely also really good with stimming. I've got this one, and I've also got what they call a sensory, like a fidget cube. I'm still figuring out how I feel about it. I tried it out because one of my coworkers suggested it to me. It was like $7 at Kmart, and it has like all throughout, it has like one that you click, which I really like. There's one that has like a marble ball, which I really like as well. I've also figured out that I really like cold kind of things. I love my silk pillows. They just make me feel very comfortable, especially with my sensory issues. Yeah, and I like those like ones where you like fiddle the ball around, if that makes sense. I don't have it with me, otherwise I would show you. But yeah, so I've had a lot of people with my diagnosis not understand, which is fine. I've had like my way of trying to unmask with my loved ones now that I know I'm autistic and I know that I've masked with them for so long. My way of unmasking with them is telling them kind of my day-to-day, being real with them about my symptoms, being real about what I struggle with. Although it can come out really selfish, which I don't mean it to, that's my way of trying to tell them in my own way that I trust them enough to tell them, I guess. It has been perceived wrong in the past. I've had to explain myself a few times, which is fair enough. If you don't quite understand, it does sound like I'm just talking about me all the time, which I don't mean to do at all. I've been trying to get better with it. But I'm a person that, like, with my autism and ADHD as well, I accidentally interrupt people. I accidentally go, oh my God, now I know this story about what you're talking about. And I'll just blah, 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 like keep talking. And it's something that I'm trying to get better at. But it's something that sometimes I can't control. And, I've had a few times for my loved ones saying, all you talk about is your autism. And like, it's something that I am trying to get better at, but it is also my way of navigating this world and trying to unmask with them, because I have noticed as a late diagnosed adult that the subject of autism in this society is very, very hard to do. Of course, you get the really good people. Like, I have really good coworkers and a great manager and a great partner that understand, or even if they don't understand, try to understand and ask questions. But I've also had a lot of people that, as I said, either treat me like a baby or, kind of use my symptoms against me, even when they know I can't control it. And of course, that's really hurtful. And sometimes I don't know how to navigate it at all. But it's something that I'm trying to get better at with navigating, how I want to be treated, how I want to treat others as well. And it's something that, as I said, is very hard to navigate for me. But with therapy and speaking to people, I think I've gotten a lot better since 6 months ago. But of course, you know, I'm human. I make mistakes and I say things that I don't really mean. Yeah. And again, I just wanted to make this channel, one, because it's a way for me to just, you know, talk about my journey and talk about autism in a way that, like, isn't bad or isn't, you know, just explaining, oh, these are my symptoms. I want to also show the good things about autism. Like, I have creativity, you know, and I care for others. I have such a big heart, and like I'm knowledgeable about my special interests, and like there's so much about me that is good. Just like I was going to say, despite the autism is not bad. It is not a bad word. It is not a bad thing. I have met so many neurodivergent people who are amazing and so creative and so, like, just a breath of fresh air to be around. And I just want to start the conversation of, if you have a neurodivergent person in your life, ask them questions, see what helps them, speak to them about their special interests. You know, like, there are so many neurodivergents out there that feel like they can't unmask with people, which means that, you know, it's really sad for me to know that, like, there's a lot of people in my life that I don't feel comfortable unmasking around, which means they won't really know kind of the real me, whether I want them to or not. And that's something that really does upset me, and I'm sure would probably upset a few neurodivergent people. As I said, everything that I've said in this video, it's my personal experience and my personal thoughts. Every neurodivergent person is different depending on, you know, a lot of things. But if you have a neurodivergent person in your life, you know, just ask them questions if they're comfortable with that. I would rather people ask me questions. But yeah, so from this video, as I said, one of my special interests is escape rooms. I really want to go and review escape rooms from a neurodivergent perspective, my own perspective. When I say neurodivergent, I mean my neurodivergency. Of course, I'm not going to, you know, film in an escape room because that's not allowed. I want to, you know, speak about, you know, what's been helping me and kind of just bring you guys in with my journey. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, just pop it down below. I'll try and find the link for these headphones to pop it down in the description. If anyone wants to grab them, they're around like 200 and something. I don't quite remember. I'll have to check. But they're really, really good. I like the fact that they kind of hug my ears, kind of feels like a big old hug. I'll also try and find the sensory toys for these ones. They're usually at Kmart, but I'll have a look and try and link it in the description below. But if you have any questions or you want me to make any type of video, just pop it in the comments. But yeah, that's my story. I might have forgotten a few things, which I'll probably just add in another video, knowing me. But yeah, if you want to continue with my journey, just subscribe. I also have an Instagram as well. If you need anyone to talk to, I'm always here as well. So yeah, have a good day, guys.